So this video will be about the 2012 Mr. Olympia contest, which was won by Phil Heath. Greene was placed second. Many believe that Phil's physique that year was even better than in 2011. He was more huge, yet highly conditioned, defined, and aesthetic, with total control over his midsection. The front double biceps shows the great development they both have in their biceps, although they have different shapes. I personally prefer Phil's biceps because they extend better than those of Kai's, which look shorter. Look at the size difference between Phil and Kai's forearms. No contest whatsoever. Kai has two major weaknesses in his physique, namely his forearms and traps. I've uploaded a video called Greene's Weaknesses in which I elaborated on this issue. I'll leave an annotation for those who haven't watched it yet. Now Kai's chest and lats are wider, and the sweep in his lats is amazing. Both have small waist and incredibly huge, conditioned, and separated wheels. Another front double biceps shows the difference in shape between their biceps. Phil's biceps extend more and connects with the incredibly huge forearms. Kai's biceps are shorter, but they have the better peak. There's this gap between Kai's biceps and his forearms, not to mention the overwhelming size of Phil's forearms over those of Kai. If we are talking arms alone, then I would definitely give it to Phil, because his biceps better connect with his forearms, which are way better and more developed than Kai's thin forearms. But this pose is not only about the arms. Kai's lats are wider and his V taper is more impressive, so I think he would win this pose. The front lat spread shows the width Kai has over Phil in this pose. His lats look like wings. This pose shows the high level of conditioning they both had that year, with visible striations in different muscular groups. Again, notice Kai's thin forearms in comparison to the gigantic forearms of Phil. It almost shows in every single pose. Overall, Kai would win, making use of his lats width. Both hit an incredible side chest pose. The high level of conditioning clearly shows in the visible striations in their chest. Their arms are huge and their wheels are incredibly conditioned. A great pose for them both. But I would give it to Phil, because overall, Phil's chest, although not that wide, yet complete, more rounded, and thicker than that of Kai. And I personally prefer the way Phil hits this pose more than Kai does. The side triceps shows the dominant triceps Phil has. Kai's triceps are good and striated, but they are small and don't extend well towards his elbow, unlike those of Phil. Phil's shoulders look explosive, and his forearms look double the size of those of Kai. Their wheels look huge and highly conditioned, and their hamstrings are pumped and separated from their quads. Phil wins this pose. Another side triceps shows the size difference between Phil and Kai's shoulders and forearms. Kai added more size in later years, but in 2012, Phil was easily bigger in specific groups, especially the shoulders and the forearms, and we will come to see that in minutes. This back shot clearly shows the huge difference between Phil's mind-blowing traps and Kai's flattened traps. Phil's traps look like huge snakes crawling on his back in comparison to those of Kai, which do not show at all. Phil's lower back looks insane, and their glutes and hamstrings look highly striated, conditioned, and separated. The back double biceps shows Phil's superiority in his shoulders and traps. Phil's shoulders are bigger and fuller than those of Kai, who has this gap between his deltoid and his traps. Phil's traps look way more impressive. Their rear shoulders perfectly connect with their highly defined lats. Their lower back looks pumped and complete. Their glutes and hamstrings are striated and highly conditioned. Another back double biceps shows Phil's enormous traps and full shoulders in comparison to Kai's smaller traps and shoulders. Again, notice this gap or hole between Kai's deltoid and traps. Their glutes and hamstrings look insanely striated and conditioned. The peak in Kai's biceps is mind-blowing, but his thin forearms clearly show in this pose in comparison to Phil's huge forearms. This pose goes to Phil. The back lat spread shows Phil's incredibly huge traps compared to the flattened and almost non-existent traps of Kai Greene. Kai's lats are definitely wider, but he is flattened and doesn't show the pumps Phil shows in his back. Their glutes and hamstrings are ripped and conditioned. This pose is worn by Phil Heath. The abs and thighs shows Phil's narrow waist and incredibly huge, separated and highly conditioned wheels with no symptoms of the bloated gut. I think Kai's six-pack abs look more aesthetic and complete. Both show great conditioning with visible obliques. Kai's lat sweep looks insane and perfectly connects with his midsection, and his quads are huge and striated. A great pose for them both, but Kai Greene would win the abs and thighs. The most muscular pose shows the incredible development of Phil's traps and rounded shoulders, which look way more impressive than Kai's traps and shoulders. Kai didn't hit this pose well, and that's what urged Louis Marco to directly advise Kai not to hit the crab most muscular and to hit the standing most muscular instead, with his hands on his thighs so that his weak traps won't be exposed in this pose. Another most muscular pose clearly shows Kai's weak traps and flattened shoulders in comparison to Phil's incredible traps and full rounded shoulders. Both had great conditioning, which shows in the striations in their chest and quads. This pose clearly shows that Phil rightfully won the Olympia that year. Look at the size difference between their shoulders, arms, and forearms. Even Phil's chest is thicker and more rounded and pumped than that of Kai. Don't forget to check the annotation to watch my video about Kai's major weaknesses, namely his flattened traps and thin forearms. That was all for this video. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like. Thanks for watching, and have a nice one.